Sarah Mitchell's hands trembled as she sat on the edge of the bed in the small ranch house, still wearing her simple white dress. Through the window, she could see the last traces of sunset painting the Montana sky in shades of crimson and gold. Downstairs, she could hear the heavy footsteps of her new husband, a man she'd married just 4 hours ago, a man she barely knew. The arrangement had been practical, not romantic. Her father's debts. The bank's threats. And then Jackson, Buck Coleman, had appeared like something out of an old Western movie, 6'8" of solid muscle, weathered skin, and quiet intensity. He'd offered to pay off everything in exchange for a wife. Her father had accepted before Sarah could even process what was happening. Now here she was, 23 years old, married to a giant of a man who looked like he could break her in half without trying, waiting for a wedding night she'd never imagined would happen this way. The footsteps stopped outside the bedroom door. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. She heard him pause, heard what sounded like a deep sigh, and then the door opened slowly. Buck had to duck to enter his own bedroom. He'd removed his suit jacket and tie, and his white shirt was unbuttoned at the collar. In the soft lamplight, Sarah could see the nervous tension in his massive shoulders, the uncertainty in his steel-gray eyes. This giant cowboy, who looked like he'd never been afraid of anything in his life, stood frozen in the doorway as if he'd just walked into a room full of rattlesnakes. "Sarah," he said quietly, his deep voice barely above a whisper. We need to talk." She nodded, unable to find her voice. Her whole body felt tight with fear and anticipation and a strange kind of grief for the life she'd imagined having someday, a life with romance and choice and time to fall in love before this moment arrived. Buck moved slowly into the room, and Sarah noticed something surprising. He was keeping his distance, staying near the wall as if he was afraid of frightening her. For such a large man, he moved with careful deliberation, like someone who'd learned long ago that his size could intimidate. "I know this isn't what you wanted," Buck began, running a hand through his dark hair. "Hell, it's not exactly what I wanted either, if I'm being honest. I never thought I'd get married like this, like some kind of business transaction." Sarah found her voice, though it shook. "Then why did you do it?" Buck's jaw tightened. "Same reason you did, I suspect. Desperation. I've been alone on this ranch for 8 years since my parents passed. Tried to make it work by myself, but a man can only do so much alone. I needed help. Needed a partner. And I'm not exactly smooth with women." He gave a self-deprecating smile that made him look younger, more vulnerable. "Never learned the pretty words or the courting rituals. I'm better with horses than people." Despite her fear, Sarah felt a small smile tug at her lips. There was something honest about him, something real that cut through her terror. "So here we are," Buck continued, still keeping his distance. "Married strangers on what's supposed to be our wedding night, both of us probably scared out of our minds." "You're scared?" Sarah asked, surprised. Buck let out a low laugh. "Terrified. I'm about to share my life with a woman I met 3 weeks ago. I'm responsible for your happiness now, your safety, your everything. And I'm not a gentleman by nature, Sarah. I work with my hands. I break wild horses. I've lived rough for a long time." He looked down at his calloused palms as if seeing them for the first time. "I'm afraid of hurting you. Afraid of failing you." Something in Sarah's chest loosened at his words. This giant cowboy, standing frozen by the wall, was just as frightened as she was. Maybe more so. "Buck," she said softly. "Can you sit down? You're making me nervous standing there like you're about to bolt." He moved carefully to the chair in the corner, the one farthest from the bed, and sat down. Even seated, he seemed to fill the entire space. Sarah studied him in the lamplight, seeing him clearly for perhaps the first time. His face was rugged, marked by sun and wind and hard work, but his eyes held a surprising gentleness. His hands, though huge and scarred, were steady and calm. "I need to tell you something," Sarah said, her voice barely audible. About tonight. About what you might be expecting. Buck's expression grew even more serious, his gray eyes locked on hers. Sarah felt heat rise to her cheeks, but she forced herself to continue. I've never. I don't know how to, this is my first time. The words came out in a rush, and she immediately felt foolish. Of course it was her first time. She'd been raised strictly, had barely even been kissed before 3 weeks ago when Buck had awkwardly pressed his lips to hers after their hasty courthouse ceremony. But Buck didn't laugh or dismiss her words. Instead, his entire body seemed to go even more still, his face reflecting something that looked like pain. Sarah, he said slowly, carefully. I need you to understand something. I'm not expecting anything tonight. Or any night until you're ready. This marriage might have started as an arrangement, but I'm not the kind of man who takes what isn't freely given. Sarah felt tears sting her eyes, tears of relief and confusion and a dozen other emotions she couldn't name. But surely you expect. We're married. You paid my father's debts. Don't you want? Buck stood up abruptly, and Sarah flinched despite herself. He saw the movement and immediately stepped back, his face contorted with regret. I'm sorry, he said roughly. I didn't mean to scare you. That right there, that's exactly what I'm afraid of. Sarah, look at me. He waited until she met his eyes. I'm 6'8" and weigh 240 pounds. I've got hands that can snap wood and a voice that spooks cattle. I know what I look like. I know what you must be thinking when you look at me. What am I thinking? Sarah asked, her voice steadier now. That I'm some kind of brute who bought himself a wife and expects to do whatever he wants with her. Buck's voice was rough with emotion. But that's not who I am. My mother raised me better than that. She taught me that a real man protects what's precious, doesn't take advantage of it. Sarah stood up slowly, her legs shaky but her resolve strengthening. She moved a few steps closer to Buck, close enough to see the tension in his jaw, the war going on behind his eyes. I'm scared, Buck, she admitted. I won't lie about that. But not because I think you're a brute. I'm scared because I don't know you. I'm scared because everything in my life changed in 3 weeks. I'm scared because I don't know what you expect from me or how to be a wife or how to live on a ranch 100 miles from everything I've ever known. Buck nodded slowly. That's fair. That's all fair. But, Sarah continued, taking another small step closer, I can see that you're scared too. And somehow that makes you seem less like a stranger and more like, maybe someone I could learn to know. Maybe even trust. I want you to trust me, Buck said quietly. More than anything, I want that. But I know trust isn't bought, Sarah. It's earned. And I'm willing to wait as long as it takes. They stood there in the lamplight, two strangers bound by legal papers and desperate circumstances, trying to figure out how to navigate this impossible situation. So what happens now? Sarah asked. Tonight, Buck gestured to the bed. You sleep there. I'll sleep downstairs in the spare room. Or I can stay on the couch. Whatever makes you more comfortable. You're going to sleep somewhere else? On our wedding night? Sarah, I meant what I said. Nothing happens until you want it to. Until you're ready. Until you ask me. His voice was firm but gentle. I don't care if that's a week from now or a year from now. I'm a patient man. Sarah felt something crack open inside her chest, some tight, frightened thing that had been coiled there since her father had told her about the arrangement. This giant cowboy, who could take whatever he wanted, was offering her something she'd never expected, choice. Time. Respect. It hurts, she whispered, and Buck's face immediately filled with alarm. What hurts? Are you injured? Did I? No, Sarah interrupted, shaking her head. It hurts not knowing what's going to happen. Not knowing if this marriage will ever be real or if we'll just be strangers living in the Sarah woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the sound of someone moving quietly in the room. She sat up quickly, disoriented, and saw Buck, still fully dressed from the night before, carefully setting a tray on the dresser. "Sorry," he whispered. "Didn't mean to wake you. I brought coffee and some breakfast. Figured you might be hungry." She blinked at him, memories of the previous night flooding back. They'd talked until nearly 3 in the morning, until Sarah had finally dozed off mid-sentence. She had a vague memory of Buck gently covering her with a quilt before leaving the room. "Did you sleep at all?" she asked, noting the shadows under his eyes. "Couple hours on the couch." He moved toward the door. "I'll let you get dressed. Come down whenever you're ready. No rush." "Buck." He turned back. "Thank you. For last night. For being kind." His expression was unreadable. "Nothing to thank me for, Sarah. That's just basic decency." But Sarah was learning that what Buck considered basic decency was actually something rare and precious. The weeks that followed established a strange but comfortable rhythm. Buck slept downstairs. He worked the ranch from before dawn until after dark, coming in exhausted and covered in dust. Sarah learned to cook on the old wood stove, learned to manage the household, learned the 100 small tasks that kept the ranch running. They had breakfast together each morning and dinner each night, talking more easily as the days passed. Buck taught her to ride, his large hands steadying her in the saddle, his patient voice coaching her through her fear. Sarah taught him that he didn't have to shoulder every burden alone, that accepting help wasn't weakness. "You're working yourself to death," she told him one evening when he came in limping from a kick one of the horses had landed. "Ranch won't run itself," he muttered, lowering himself carefully into a chair. "Let me see." Sarah knelt beside him, rolling up his pant leg to examine the bruise blooming on his shin. Her fingers were gentle as they probed the injury. "It's not broken, but you need ice." Buck sat very still, watching her tend to him with an expression she couldn't quite read. "You don't have to do this." "I want to," Sarah said simply. And she realized it was true. Somewhere in the past 6 weeks, her fear of this giant man had transformed into something else: concern, affection, maybe the beginnings of something deeper. Their hands touched often now, passing dishes at dinner, working together to repair a fence, Buck helping her down from the wagon after trips to town. Each touch lasted a fraction longer than necessary, carried more weight than it should. One evening, 2 months into their marriage, a storm rolled across the Montana plains with violent fury. Lightning cracked so close to the house that the windows rattled. Sarah, who'd always been terrified of storms, found herself at Buck's bedroom door downstairs without quite knowing how she'd gotten there. "Buck," she called softly through the door. He opened it immediately, concern etched across his face. "Sarah? What's wrong?" "The storm," she admitted, feeling foolish. "I'm scared. I know it's silly, but..." "It's not silly." Buck stepped aside. "Come in. We can wait it out together." They sat on opposite ends of his bed, the one he'd been sleeping in alone while she occupied the master bedroom, listening to the storm rage outside. Thunder shook the house. Rain hammered the roof. And somewhere in the darkness, Sarah's hand found Buck's. "I've been thinking," she said quietly. "About what?" "About this arrangement. About us." She felt him tense beside her. "About how it doesn't feel like an arrangement anymore. At least not to me." Buck was quiet for a long moment. "What does it feel like?" "Like we're building something real. Like maybe we could have an actual marriage instead of just existing in the same house." "Sarah," Buck's voice was rough with emotion. "I don't want to push you. I meant what I said that first night. I know you did. That's why I trust you now." She squeezed his hand. "I'm not saying I'm ready for everything. But I'm ready for more than we have. I'm ready to try." The storm raged outside, but inside that small bedroom, something shifted. Buck turned toward her in the darkness, his free hand coming up to gently cup her face. "Tell me if I should stop," he whispered. "Don't stop," Sarah breathed. His kiss was gentle, careful, nothing like the awkward press of lips at their courthouse wedding. This kiss held question and answer, promise and hope. Sarah felt her heart hammer against her ribs, not with fear now, but with anticipation. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Buck rested his forehead against hers. "We can go slow," he murmured. "As slow as you need." "I know," Sarah said. "That's why I'm not afraid anymore." They spent that night talking again, holding each other as the storm passed, building the foundation of trust that would carry them through what came next. By the time the sun rose, painting the rain-washed world in shades of gold, Sarah knew with certainty that this accidental marriage had become the real thing. She'd fallen in love with her giant cowboy, with his gentleness hidden beneath rough exterior, his patience, his unwavering respect for her autonomy. And she could see in his eyes that he felt the same. "When you're ready," Buck told her as they watched the sunrise together, "really ready, you let me know. No rush. No pressure. Just, let me know." Sarah smiled and kissed him softly. "Soon," she promised. "Very soon." 3 weeks later, on a warm summer evening, Sarah found Buck in the barn finishing the evening feeding. She'd spent the afternoon in town with Martha Henderson, the ranch wife who'd become her closest friend, gathering courage for what she was about to do. "Buck," she called softly from the barn entrance. He looked up from the stall he was cleaning, his face lighting up the way it always did now when he saw her. "Hey. Didn't expect you back so soon. How was town?" "Good. Martha sends her regards." Sarah moved closer, her heart pounding. "Buck, can we talk?" Concern immediately clouded his features. "Of course. What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Actually, everything's right." She took a deep breath. "I'm ready." Buck went completely still, the pitchfork frozen in his hands. "Ready for us. For a real marriage. For everything." Sarah's voice shook slightly, but her resolve was firm. "I love you, Buck. I think I've loved you for a while now. And I'm ready for this to be real in every way." The pitchfork clattered to the ground. Buck crossed the space between them in 3 long strides, pulling her into his arms. "You're sure?" "Sarah, you're absolutely sure." "I've never been more sure of anything." He kissed her deeply, and she felt the difference, felt the want he'd been holding back for months, the desire he'd kept carefully controlled out of respect for her. It thrilled and terrified her in equal measure. "Come inside," Buck murmured against her lips. "If we're doing this, we're doing it right." Later, in the master bedroom they would finally share, Buck lit the lamp and turned to face Sarah. She stood by the bed, trembling slightly despite her resolve. "Hey," Buck said softly, moving to her. "We can still wait." "There's no." "No," Sarah interrupted. "I want this. I want you. I'm just nervous." "Me too," Buck admitted, and somehow that helped. He kissed her slowly, thoroughly, his large hands gentle as they moved to the buttons of her dress. Each touch was reverent, patient, asking permission. Sarah's hands found his shirt, fumbling with the buttons, and Buck helped her, never rushing, always watching her face for signs of discomfort. When they finally lay together, skin against skin, Sarah felt a moment of panic. Buck was so large, so strong, and she was so inexperienced. "It's going to hurt, isn't it?" she whispered. "This is my first time. I don't know what to expect." Buck froze above her, his entire body going still. She could see the war in his eyes, desire fighting with his protective instinct, want battling with his need to keep her safe. "Sarah," his voice was strained. "The last thing I want is to hurt you. I know. But it's okay. I trust you." She reached up to touch his face. Just, be gentle. Please. Buck lowered his head, pressing his forehead to hers. I'll be as gentle as I can. And if it's too much, if you want me to stop, you tell me. Promise me you'll tell me. I promise. He kissed her softly, then whispered against her lips, it'll be over quick, the pain part, I mean. And then. He kissed her again. Then I'll spend the rest of the night making sure you know how much I love you. The pain, when it came, was sharp and brief. Sarah cried out, her fingers digging into Buck's shoulders, and he immediately stilled. I'm sorry, he groaned. God, Sarah, I'm so sorry. Do you want me to stop? No, she gasped. Keep going. Just, slowly. And Buck did, moving with exquisite care, murmuring words of love and reassurance, kissing away her tears, his rough hands surprisingly tender as they learned her body. The pain faded into discomfort, and then into something else, something warm and intimate and binding. When it was over, Buck held her close, his large body curled protectively around hers. Are you okay? He asked, his voice rough with emotion. Did I hurt you too much? Sarah turned in his arms, studying his face in the lamplight. She saw love there, and concern, and a vulnerability that made her heart ache. I'm perfect, she said honestly. We're perfect. Buck's face broke into a smile that made him look almost boyish. I love you, Sarah Coleman. I loved you from that first night when you weren't afraid to tell me you were scared. I loved you when you laughed at my terrible jokes. I loved you when you decided to trust me even though I gave you every reason not to. I love you too, Sarah whispered. My giant cowboy with the gentlest heart. They lay together as the night deepened around them, two people who'd started as desperate strangers and become something infinitely more precious. The arrangement was over. The real marriage, built on trust, patience, and hard-won love, was just beginning. Outside, the Montana stars blazed in an endless sky. Inside, two hearts beat as one, finally home.